Okay, welcome to the Three Principles Global Community webinar. The Three Principles Global Community, or 3PGC, is a non-profit organisation committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles as introduced by Sydney Banks to people throughout the world. And today we welcome Sharon Usagawa as our guest speaker. Sharon is a licensed clinical social worker who was first introduced to the principles under the guidance of Christine Heath's clinic, the Hawaii Counselling and Education Centre. Sharon provided individual, couples, child, adolescent and family therapy, programs for at-risk and disadvantaged children and children with special needs, and taught community education classes as well as classes in the prison system. The military also became a near and dear community to work with, as she spent several years providing counselling and support to active duty service members and their families. Support to the National Guard and Reservists in the Pacific, including outreach to Guam, Saipan and American Samoa. And finally, the heartwarming work of providing support at wounded warrior retreats. Sharon is currently in private practice, splitting her practice between community and military members. In addition, she provides supervision and training to graduate student interns entering the field of social work or psychology, or those seeking their clinical license for future independent practice. Sharing about and pointing people to recognize their innate mental health in the face of tremendous obstacles has made this work such a joy. And Sharon has said, considering that I was ready to quit the field after my first year out of graduate school, the next 30 years have flown by. Welcome, Sharon.
Thank you. Thank you, Justine. And thank everybody for joining us today. I hope to be able to share, a little bit of wisdom with you folks and can pass it on, keep passing it on more and more. We certainly know the world needs it, right? So Justine talked a lot about what I've done, and I wanted to share about what I've learned. And honestly, the main thing that I've learned is how amazing we all are, how amazing human beings are. And that just blows me away all the time. I think it's something, Sid has said before that we're all sitting in mental health and we don't know it. And I just listened to one of his Hawaii talks and he said, we're all sitting in enlightenment and we don't know it. So that's kind of what I saw with, how amazing we are. And it's not a bragging kind of place. It's a very humble place of gratitude, really, because that kind of speaks to what my title was, oh, what a relief it is to know the three principles. And that has proven itself over and over for myself in my life and also with clients, that in a short amount of time, not all the time, but in a short amount of time, they have this whole changeover in how they see their life. And I'm sure, as many of you know, it's not the circumstances of their life that changes, but it's the inside that changes. So, some of the insights that I've had with that, seeing how amazing we are, and I sometimes refer to it as the pillars of the principles. When I speak to clients, kind of the two things that I focus on is innate mental health and, of course, understanding how thought works. And I'm always pointing out about how, we're really pointing to the function of thought, right? Not the content of our thinking. And it's not an easy thing to talk about, but just really seeing that illusion of our thinking And thank goodness, you know, thank goodness. And you wake up and see that I don't have to believe all this crap going on in my head, you know, and I don't need to listen to that. That's where the relief comes. And I think the more and more we move into that space before thought, that's where it kind of all appears, where we see more. And I've seen for myself that anytime I can get out of my head, I'm just learning from what's in front of me, learning from my daughter or my husband or, you know, just the people around, and being able to observe them without any judgment or personalizing. I mean, your heart just goes out to people so much more, so easily. And it's so powerful because I've seen how we can redefine relationships. I never thought that was possible before. You know, I would just get caught up in the relationship and caught up in the words and not really see the person. And, you know, it sounds so simple, but I remember before knowing, there's the before knowing 3 principles and the after, right? We kind of all have that distinction. So before knowing the principles, you know, if my husband or someone I knew got upset, what did I think? You know, I thought, oh, they're so mean, they're so selfish, they're so, you know, self-absorbed and inconsiderate. And then when that veil of my own thinking was taken away, again, it sounds so simple. I just saw that, oh, they're upset. And then I'd be curious about what the thoughts are that is creating that upset in them. And, you know, just that curiosity, I feel compassion for them. And over that happened. You know, I'm kind of one of more the incremental learner. It wasn't like huge insights that changed my life in the moment. So it came more incrementally, moment by moment, here and there. And, you know, what I said in the introduction about that first year, you know, having turned me into burnt toast, and how the next 30 years have flown by is because I've been able to see that in my clients and in every human being, and the potential that exists in all of us once we can free ourselves from our own thinking. And eventually I'd like to hear from you guys, you know, about that, your thoughts about thought, and, you know, where it is that you might be getting caught up in, and how we can toss around some ideas about getting past it, seeing through it a lot more. So, you know, that's a little bit about how I really point to seeing how thought works. That it truly is, it's just the ability that it allows us to create these cognitive ideas in our head that we get fooled by, that we end up believing, and it takes us on a whole nother path, mostly struggle. Time and time again, it's just creating more distance where we can see what we're creating, and let it be a thought. You know, thoughts don't stay alive on their own. We're the only ones that can keep them alive. We're the only ones that can pull them back up and put it smack in front of our face again. I know I did that so often. And then the other part, you know, where I think the gift really lies is that innate mental health. And gosh, how do you talk about innate mental health, right? The feeling, it's the nicest feeling, the most beautiful feeling that you can find. And oftentimes when I'm, after I do an intake with a client, I'll often ask them, when did you feel your best? And for some of them, they can't remember a time in their life when they felt good. It was so long ago. Some of them can recall, like, oh, when I go surfing, when I go hiking, when I play music. So those are easier because they can at least reflect on something and kind of pull that feeling up. But there are some that, they can't remember the last time. And then I'll point them a little further back when they're innocent kids and just playing around and having a good time. And that usually does it. That usually does it. They'll kind of remember, yeah, I used to be so carefree and, just not have any worries. And the thing that I'm, trying to get them to notice is that is truly our natural space. That is truly what we were born into. You don't have to work for it. You don't have to build it. You just have to see it and recognize it. That is our baseline of emotional well-being, what true mental health is. We were born into it. And so, I always kind of point to babies, infants, and toddlers, right? They're happy for no good reason. And that's what we have to remember, is we have that. And honestly, our own common sense tells us about it, because anytime that any person is away from that naturally good, healthy space for a prolonged period of time, we start to wonder, like, what's wrong with me? Or what's wrong with my life? And that's where we go looking in the wrong direction. What we want to see is that, there's this part of us that knows we're supposed to feel fine. We know that. Every single person knows that. And they just innocently, got lost in not understanding the role of thought. There's so many different ways to talk about it, I mean, just as I'm bringing these things up, I think of all these different ways that I can go. And I'm trying to keep it simple. But so here's I guess it's kind of a funny way to look at it. But, I was saying before that once you open up your mind, you learn from everything in front of you. And so I'm not usually a pet person, but, and a lot of you have heard this from Hawaii, but my daughter was given a bunny as a prom proposal. This boy that had a crush on her for years came up to her one day in high school and had a big poster that said, "Will some bunny be my prom date?" Well, he gave her a bunny with that proposal. They do it big here. So she called me and said, out of the blue, right? "Mom, can I bring this bunny home?" I'm like, "What?" She said, "Yeah, I got this bunny from this kid today." And we're not, like I said, we weren't, I'm not much of a pet person, but how can you turn that down, right? I said, "Well, what was he going to do if he said no?" And she said, "Well, he was just going to keep it because he already had some bunnies." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, we'll try it out." So this little bunny came to work his way into our hearts, my heart, I guess. But I learned so much from this bunny. I came home one day. So my daughter gets this bunny and she's a senior in high school. And then she takes off in the fall to go to college. So I'm left with the bunny. I'm left with taking care of the bunny. And so one day I forgot to feed him, went to work, came back. Oh no, oh my gosh, I forgot to feed the poor bunny. And I rush upstairs and I open the sliding door and I look at the bunny and he's perfectly fine, right? They're perfectly fine. He doesn't have a mad look on his face. He's not coming to, scratch me and because he's all mad. He's just looking at me like, where's my food? But I realized like, you're just perfectly content because they don't have that cognitive function of thought. They don't drive themselves crazy over it. They just are okay. And then that got me thinking about animals in general, that, in the world of animals, they live in what us human beings would call trauma-inducing situations every moment of their life. They don't know where their next meal is coming from. They don't have a safe place to go. They might have a shelter, but it doesn't really offer them, solid protection like our own homes do. They don't know at any moment, at any time, that they or their family member is going to be violently and viciously attacked. They don't know that at any time. And yet they live in that peace of mind and that intuitive mind. Why? Because they don't have that cognitive function to create all that emotional suffering that we innocently impose upon ourselves. So that's the good part of it, right? That they have this natural peace of mind and they don't have too much thought to disturb it. But they do have, just as we do, we have this built-in, senses that are always informing us, whether we realize it or not, about our environment and our level of safety and security. And so if they hear something, if their senses pick up on something, they're going to perk up and they're going to kind of check it out a little bit more. But if they don't sense anything, they'll go right back to what they're doing. And I like to tell this story, if they come back to their shelter and it's trashed or it's gone, again, they're just kind of going to cock their head at it and look at it and then they're going to fix it or they're going to move somewhere else. They're not going to have a meltdown and, have a fit and throw their body on the ground and kick each other because, you left the door open. It's just moment by moment they respond. So that's the beautiful side that, we have that same ability. The bad side is that they don't have the capacity to think up how they can create something better. That if their so-called family member gets hurt or cut or injured, they don't have that capacity to think, let's wash this out and cover it up and maybe that'll help it. So when you look at that, when you look at thought that way, when I saw thought that way, thought is such a beautiful gift. It's really a blessing that we have, that we can create ideas and bring them to form, bring them to life, to improve our lot in life, to make things better, to help each other. And as I, saw that, it's like more and more windows kind of open that, what was the original purpose of thought? And I think back to the caveman days. so-called caveman days, when, they say that the first thought was to create a tool to make life better, to make life easier. And so what occurred to me is, maybe that's the purpose of thought, is to help ourselves and help each other. And at the same time, I just wondered, like, well, why do we get into such negative thinking? And a lot has to do is, well, we didn't understand it. We didn't understand that we even had this ability of thought. These ideas would just occur to us because of what we're seeing, because of what we're sensing. It would just occur to us about, some idea about how to make things better. And, I'm just sharing what made sense to me. And I don't expect it to make sense to everybody, but it made sense to me that, more in seeing how thought works, that we can't just be positive thinkers. I was trying to understand, like, why we have so much of this unhealthy thinking. And I thought, well, we can't just be positive thinkers, right? Because if we're only positive thinkers, then that could be really unhealthy too. We wouldn't take care of things. And that could be our demise too. So I used the example of my dad. He had this big sore on his thigh that nobody knew about, and until it got kind of big. And then he finally told my mom about it. And my mom said, how come you didn't say anything earlier? By now it's about, 3, 4, 5 inches in diameter. And takes him to the doctor. Doctor sends him to the hospital. We find out that he has adult leukemia. It's like, oh my goodness, And I could see his thinking, it's nothing, no big deal, it's gonna go away. So it took him a while to get his attention. Well, the good part of that story is he was miraculous, and he basically it was a pretty risky thing. The doctor was saying that 20% survived, and in a month we'd know. Well, he was, and I think part of it was his thinking, his outlook, because he also didn't worry too much. But long story short, he survived it, and the oncologist said, he was his oldest survivor. At 80, he was 80 when all that happened. So, we need critical thinking. We need critical thinking sometimes to see that, we need to take care of stuff. It's not going to happen on its own. And I think we just got really caught up in the critical thinking, not realizing, again, we're so amazing how we're put together, that we have these built-in signals, psychologically speaking, to guide us in how we use thought and how we understand thought. So emotions are kind of like our first line of defense, that once we're creating something that with thought that's not too healthy, we get a signal, we get an emotion attached to it. And to me, it's kind of like life is telling us, beep, beep, back up. You got something to take care of in your life, but this kind of thinking is not going to help you. And then we get that gut feeling like, I know this is not good. So, when Sid saw the principles of mind, consciousness, and thought, all of that intelligence that's built into us is kind of what he saw, you know? Like we have everything, all the checks and balances built in, just as much as we do with our physical health. We have all the checks and balances to give us little warning signs that you're trying to get your attention, take care of me so we can be healthy and go on living this beautiful life. And we didn't understand all of this psychologically speaking. We're still trying to really understand the logic behind it. But you start to see, you know, that, oh, that's what I saw. It's like, I don't have to get angry because I don't like something in order to work it out with someone. You know, where before, that's all I had, right? That's all we have. If you only have angry thoughts in your head, that's all you have. Until you get an insight or another recognition that I can see it differently. And so that's what we're pointing people to, is that we can. Thought is just an ability. It's not a true reality. It creates a reality, but it's not a true reality. So, you know, more and more, I've just been seeing those little signals and the feelings and the inklings that we get from that deeper source of wisdom, where it feels like a little nudge. And then the emotions that we get caught up with in our thinking. And, you know, it kind of works like that, if we don't catch it right away, then it gets worse, right? If we perpetuate that kind of thinking, if the feeling gets more intense. And it's kind of like really trying to get our attention to, you're going the wrong direction. And it's funny because we all, even before we knew the principles, when we got out of that state of mind, when we got out of that thinking, then the world looks so different again. You know, it's like, oh, it wasn't that bad. I wish I didn't say that. I knew I shouldn't have said that. I think it's kind of humorous in a sense that, you know, that same pattern has been going on for centuries and centuries in human beings. Like, why did it take us so long to see that? It took us so long to see that pattern of, you know, when we get into this unhealthy thinking and emotion, it looks so bad and it feels so bad. But when you come out of it, it's so different. You'd think we would catch on a lot quicker. So thank goodness for knowing the principles. Thank goodness that, you know, we're finally being pointed in the right direction where we can see how it works and what we're creating and really live to our true potential and possibilities, which are infinite. That, you know, that deeper wisdom, that source of life has always been pointing and nudging everything in life towards being healthier and thriving. You see that in nature everywhere. So I do want to check in and see what people are hearing, if it makes sense, you know, and if it doesn't make sense, like we used to say, just toss it. What are you folks hearing? Is it helpful?
to anyone, if you'd like to ask Sharon a question or share something about what you're hearing, you can just unmute yourself and speak. Or if you prefer to raise your digital hand, you can do that down the bottom under reactions.
I'd just like to say something, Justine.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there was something you said earlier. I can't remember the word you used. I had a similar experience in the swimming pool with a friend of mine about 2.5 years ago when I was going through a series of critical events and anxiety. And the friend that came swimming with me said to me, Michael, when was the last time you felt content or contentment? And I gave him a short, quick answer, a very skin deep answer initially, but then I went home and I thought about it deeply, and it had a profound impact on me during the 6-week period where I was working very, very hard on this anxiety. Just for a bit of background, I rescued 4 South Koreans in the surf 3 years ago. But I also had family issues. I also got involved in a assault and robbery. There was a lady being robbed and assaulted. A few things happened to us in quick succession. And I'm quite a resilient person, but I did hit rock bottom 3 years ago. And for this friend of mine to say, when was the last time you felt content? It was a reminder I needed at a time when my anxiety levels were so high that my baseline needed to come down.
Yeah.
And I have had a series of milestones over 3 years. It probably took about 6 weeks of really hard physical and emotional work to get through the anxiety. And then there's been minor milestones along the way. And now I feel like I'm coming into like the best version of myself.
Awesome.
But it hasn't been without, a lot of hard work, which I don't really have time to share with this. Yeah, anyway, that's all I had to say.
Have you been with the principal long?
No, but it's funny. Justine and I had known each other prior to these critical events, and at the time, I didn't have the time, and she'd invited me to come and spend some time with her, and I just kept deferring it. And now I've just about come full circle, and we stay in touch.
Thank you. That's awesome. Yeah, so it's just pointing back to what we already have, right? Kind of knowing that it's there and that we can get back to it. It never leaves you, never leaves us. You can just get hidden.
I felt during the period of high anxiety, back injuries, dramas all happening around me simultaneously. I really needed 2 things. One was be open to the possibility of massive change and surrender to the process. If people don't do that, then they're not ready to move forward. And the second thing was radical self-care without guilt. And I emphasize without guilt, because as a dad or a father or a husband, there's all these other things. The washing has to be done. Kids have to be driven to school, blah, blah, blah. And at some point, you've got to look after yourself. Even if it's only 5 minutes every day, sunbaking out on the porch, just to hold that space for yourself and slowly reclaim it.
Yeah. And I think the word you use, surrender, is often spoke of, you know, where, because you can't work at your thinking. That's just going to keep you there. And it is more of a surrendering, of letting it go, and you know, seeing what happens when you do let go, that there is something, there is so much more for us to recognize and kind of grab hold of, that is so much better. And I think that's what you're speaking to, is that's what you're discovering more of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all we're pointing to is all of that exists before thought. That's all we're pointing to, you know, that there's different ways that people perceive and think, you know, because being a therapist, when I didn't understand this, I was looking at a lot of different ways to try and get people to work through their thinking so that they could find some relief. And so knowing now that that relief and that answer is beyond their thinking process, it's pointing to that deeper part. And, you know, and it sounds like you definitely found it. You definitely connected with something more in yourself, that self-love. So I think that will come naturally, you know, when you're in that calm state, and like you've already done it, you know, when you're faced with a situation where you have to act like right away.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what we're pointing to. It's something that you sensed and you jumped into action, you know. So that calm space is really what allows us to pick up on those a lot quicker, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it allows us to mindfully respond rather than react every time something arises.
Yeah. And I'm taking it as, you know, mindfully respond is in the moment, kind of intuitively, whereas react is more from our head. But what we're pointing to is that there's a natural wisdom that has always been there, kind of driving us towards, you know, what we know is good. And you have a strong sense of that. And all your experiences have just added to it.
We've got a little while left, so I want to check in with some other people. There might be some others who wanted to share or ask something.
Sorry, it was just a bit hard to hear you.
Oh, yeah, I'm just wanting to check in with others now to see if there's someone else that wants to share or ask Sharon something. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Matthew, did you want to speak?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to. Yeah, I just I liked Sharon very much what you said about the different sides of thinking, and I'm pretty new to the principles too, and I mean, this is more for myself, but I also work as a psychologist in private practice in Sydney, so I see it with my clients as well, but the reflection that I had around that positive and negative thinking, and just got a cat jumping up my lap. So I agree with you very much about pets. This is a very soothing, big old ginger tomcat here. But the thing is, you know, there's a song I sometimes reflect on. It's an old Joni Mitchell song, and it goes like, you know, both sides now, people might know the song, and it talks about, you know, I used to think of clouds as, I can't remember the lyrics offhand, but very positive and lovely, like ice creams and angels' wings and so on. And then she saw clouds getting in the way, and about rain and, you know, thunderstorms and things like that. And then the song goes on, I used to think about the upside of life. And then I saw the downside And then she talks about, and I used to see, the song's called Both Sides Now. It's a beautiful song. And then she talked about love. You know, I used to see, you know, the upside of love, and now she's seeing the downside of love. And but it's just really beautiful, you know, because it talks about what you were pointing to, Sharon, about the two sides. And you know, Joni Mitchell's a beautiful singer, but the song's a bit mournful in the end. You know, it's not, she doesn't come down on the upside, but she sees both sides now. You know what I mean? And sometimes I must admit I'm in that place, you know, whereas you know, and I like what you said, because I mean, I think I'm naturally optimistic, but I do get those down moments, and I do sometimes think they've got a place too. Yeah. So I just thought I'd throw that in, because, you know, I reflect on that a bit, and so sometimes I see, you know, I don't want to stay in my, you know, the downside and seeing, you know, the underside of things too much, but I get stuck there. But sometimes, you know, something even good comes from that, I think, you know. But they're just some thoughts, yeah, on that. Yeah.
Thank you. And I think, you know, to maybe clarify a little bit more, it's seeing all thought. It's seeing all thought, and knowing that knowing that it's something that we are individually making up in the moment. You know, I know that's so hard to speak to, but you don't want to be too concerned about your thinking. You really want to shift over to the feeling behind it. You know, that innately that innately healthy, good, solid feeling that we fall back on all the time. That, you know, when I was talking about how we can get into those low moods and get into that thought and feeling, but we always come out of it. And when we come out of it, that's our natural place. That's the feeling that you want to do life from. And recognize that when we get into that other, you know, that negative thinking, that we're just getting lost in our interpretation of what we're looking at. It's a thing. So, you know, what comes to mind is I had this class. It was a very short class with a small office. And in just a couple of hours, I was trying to give them a sense of, you know, how to live from that place of well-being. And so we're naturally talking about thought and trying to, you know, see how we can let go of our thoughts, and we'll let wisdom guide us. And this one woman had brought up in the end, because I think most people hear it as just be a positive thinker, and that's not what we're talking about. It's not about positive thinking or being a positive thinker. It's seeing that we're creating these thoughts, whether they're positive or negative. And in seeing, you know, that, like when I was talking about, you know, how I saw my husband's words and feelings so different, I saw what I was creating in my thinking about him. But when you take away all that judgment and, you know, personal thinking, then you just see another human being, and you just feel, you know, you recognize where they're at in their own thinking. But going back to this class, this one woman in the end, she was saying that, she said, oh, if negative thoughts aren't real, then positive thoughts aren't real either. Right?
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, that's true. None of it is true, right? None of it is real, but where do you want to live from? You know, it's seeing that we are creating our experience in the moment. And if it's not serving us well, we don't have to go with it. Because once we step back into the ability of thought, once we step back into that space where thoughts are created, then you can see it totally differently, and you'll know more. You know, I mean, you'll have more of that innate compassion to see how to respond to that person or that situation. I know it's you know, it's this world before thought. And the last thing that, you know, one of the last things I might want to leave you with is sometimes I'll say, like, this is who we really are, our true self. And this is thought. And most of us walk around like it's one and the same, but it's not. You want to start to see that you're not your thinking, that thought is something that I'm creating about life on the outside. And once we give it a chance, and let go of our thinking, see what you see. See what you see when you let go of the thinking. And what you start to see is more of the truth of what's happening inside the person themselves, not about what they're doing to me, but, oh, you know, they're caught up in some thinking. And if they're having, you know, the behavior, the emotion is coming from not the best thinking, well, we all know that we, you know, when we're there, we're not going to be behaving the best. So when we recognize that in other people, that they're just getting caught up in their thoughts about whatever they're getting caught up in, that's creating that feeling in them, you just feel for them that, you know, let me see if I can help free them up. But really, you want to start with yourself. It's all about starting with ourselves and seeing how you can free yourself from your own thinking to open up and see something new, see something different. And I, you know, guarantee you that it's going to be better than the thoughts that we're stuck in. So that's what you want to see moment by moment, that anytime I'm in a struggle, let me free up my mind and take a step back, and wisdom will come through. A new thought will come through, a deeper understanding will come through. And that's where the change starts to happen. That's where you fall more into that natural good feeling, where it's not that we're thinking about what to do in life, it's more that you respond naturally, because you're starting to kind of flex that wisdom muscle more. I know in the beginning it feels like kind of a struggle where, you know, is it my thinking or is it coming from something deeper? And you can always tell by the feeling. If it's coming from a place where it's helping you feel more settled or feeling more inspired or more creative, then you know you're going in the right direction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Yeah, you're pointing at something deeper than what I was saying, so that's very helpful. Yeah, thank you.
We're all going to get caught up at some time, you know.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like we have this baseline of physical health, and we're all going to catch a cold sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, but we know how to take care of ourselves. So you're really learning how to take care of yourself mentally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, that we have this natural well-being. And of course, there's things that we can do that will, you know, take us away from it, and things that will help us be even more, sometimes what we call grounded in that well-being. But you, and Sid always pointed to that, is just, you're looking for a nice feeling. And even in the struggle, when you get to that natural good feeling that is not attached to the outside, you're going to do better. We're automatically going to do better. So it's not a happy place to go. It's a healthy place where we know that when life is showing up and, you know, challenging us in the toughest ways, we know where to go inside of ourselves that will help us to deal with that so much better than if we're trying to do it from our head and what we know. So much better. And it does take a little leap of faith to trust that, but the more you go there, the more you see that it's always there, that resource is always there to point us towards health, to point us towards resolution through understanding.
Thank you.
Well, I know that I've settled into a really lovely feeling at the moment. Thank you, Sharon. I just wanted to check in with you. It's 5 past the hour. I don't know if there are any more questions, or if you have a little more time, Sharon, if there are, or whether we'll finish up now. What's good for you?
I have a few more minutes if anybody has a comment or question.
Guys, I'd like to share something.
Yeah, go ahead, Lucinda.
Just when you talked about, you know, the positive and negative thoughts and that neither of them being real, and an insight that I had just recently that was really one of my own, one of the first times that it was really, you know, dawned on me something. And it is that place of truth is naturally positive, right? It's love. We're made of love. And I was thinking about memories that I have throughout my life. A friend passed away I live in Australia now, so, you know, I've left my home country, as you can tell by my accent. And a friend passed away, and I had beautiful memories of him, just moments, little moments captured. And it got me thinking about other friends, and I realized that I have remembered when things turned sour, or, you know, whatever reason we drifted apart, you know, and I've felt somewhere, not without realizing it, I felt that was the true them, you know, that the beautiful experiences, I kind of discounted them and thought, oh, they revealed their true colors. And it just dawned on me so deeply that actually it's the love that's real. That's the closest to reality that we get, is those moments of love with people, those moments when you look into someone's eyes and you're connected, and everything else is a misunderstanding. And it's like I became so much lighter. I feel, you know, I just feel like I've got this beautiful past, and I can see these links of love throughout it and links of wisdom that's always been there, but I never had words for it until I discovered, you know, said thanks.
Yeah.
understanding, but it's been a really beautiful revelation, and I've just been really wallowing in it, you know, like just relationship after relationships come into my head and thinking, oh, that was beautiful. There were beautiful moments there. There was beautiful moments there. Yeah, I just wanted to share that I do feel that a lot of the positivity is actually our true thinking. It's the truth.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Because it is, you know, when our mind is free and clear, that's what we're left with. Just the feeling of love and understanding and compassion. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's what Sid would call pure consciousness.
Thanks. This is the first webinar I've been able to attend in my time zone, so I'm really happy to be able to share that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Any last comments?
Yes. Hi, Sandra. Thank you. So we all have our own upbringing. We all lived our certain lives, and we each come to a place where we're either seeking, change in our life, or that seat in enlightenment. And so we're all introduced to the three principles, through different ways. And so everything that we're taught, everything that we learned growing up, and then we get to this place where, it's different, or we should be thinking a different way. So I guess my question is, at what point is it safe or recommended that, we can introduce or if we're qualified or educated enough to, or experienced enough with this, to introduce it to our children or youth or adolescents, because they're still learning. We learn manipulation, we learn reasoning, we learn
Beliefs.
Yeah. So is there a certain age or time in life where it's safe to introduce this change, or
Anytime.
anytime?
Anytime.
So
Because
it doesn't have to be where we're facing some kind of crisis or trauma, or
oh no, we actually, there's a group that are trying to get it into the schools to help kids become aware, to help them recognize what thought is. And because we get so lost, right, because we don't understand that it is just thought. And that's not thought is not the expert. Wisdom is the expert. And this is something somewhat of a huge breakthrough that Sid Banks had to bring it to psychology, and psychology is still waking up to it. And as you can tell, it's not the easiest thing to talk about, because there's a huge misunderstanding about thought. And most of us take our thinking as true and real. And, that's where we get lost in it. So absolutely, with kids, what I find is it's more teaching them about a feeling, teaching them more about how to live in that innate health that they're so much closer to than we are. And then giving them a little bit understanding about thought. And, a lot of times the kids, they take off and run with it. I got to tell you about this 6-year-old that the mom brought her in because she started having a panic attack at 6, to the point where she was throwing up. And I met with the mom the first time because I, want to get some background. And by then the daughter had her second panic attack. And she said that her daughter kind of knew that it was her thinking, You know, her daughter would tell her, Akiko, maybe you can help me with this. But her daughter would say to her, I know it's my negative thinking, but she couldn't stop it, you know? So she came in after that second time, and Akiko is oh, I'm sorry, you guys can't see her, but she's an intern that works with me. And so I had her meet with the girl too. And while I met with the mom, and, you know, just to help her start to become more conscious of what's going on in her. And after that visit, the third panic attack, anxiety attack she had, they were in the car, and they're in the car, and the girl said, pull over, because she didn't feel good. She thought she was going to throw up again. And so mom pulled over, she jumped out of the car, and she said, by the time mom got to her, she was telling herself, I'm okay. It's just my negative thinking, And she averted throwing up, you know? She didn't get so sick, and she got herself out of it. And so we're just reinforcing for her what her innate wisdom is already telling her. And since then, she hasn't had panic attacks. You know, I think we only saw her twice or maybe 3 times at the most. But she, you know, all we're doing is helping her recognize that's her wisdom talking. And so after that, she was having a lot of trouble going to school in the morning, especially if her siblings didn't have to go, you know, like if they're on break or if they're sick, then she would get herself worked up. And it just so happened that her 2 siblings didn't have to go to school one day, like their vacation was different or something. And so mom was a little worried about that. But she didn't say anything. She just, you know, kind of followed the girl's mood, and the girl was fine. And so on the way to school, the mom said, oh, I'm really proud of you, you know, how you are handling this, even though your brothers aren't going to school. And the girl said, oh, no, I don't like it, but I'm okay. Like that's the amazing recognition of knowing that, you know, she is okay in spite of the thoughts that she's having. And the thoughts are not gripping her anymore. So absolutely, we want to get to the young one as early as possible. So if you have any idea of how we can do that in Hawaii, I'd be happy to talk about that. Thank you, Junior.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, Sharon, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. And yeah, thanks for participation and being with us today, everyone.
Thank you guys for joining and being patient with me.
Okay, have a wonderful day, everyone.
Aloha.
Aloha.